Back in the late 80s, there was a woman who lived in a small rural town where there was nearly nothing but old country houses and a bunch of farmland. There were no chain restaurants or stores, and definitely no blockbuster videos. So she opened her own family-run video rental store, and eventually, when her health started to deteriorate, she closed its doors and took all the movies home with her, creating a time capsule of 80s VHS awesomeness in their house. This woman was my Grandma Grace, may she rest in peace. And when I was little, there was nothing I loved more than digging through her treasure trove of tapes to find my favorite awesomely bad 80s flicks. So in this video, we're going to discuss some of these movies, which make you wonder, what the hell were they thinking when they made this? So the first movie on our list has a 14% on the tomato meter, a 38% audience score, and a 4.7 on IMDb, giving it a total average rating of 33%. Released in 1986, Howard the Duck screams 80s. The clothing, the epic hair, the rock music, synthesizers, and drum machines. It was the movie that kicked off the MCU back when Thor was still in diapers. And it's about an anthropomorphic bird creature from a planet just like Earth that's inhabited by human-like duck people. In the movie, Howard gets sucked into a laser beam and sent through space, landing him in Cleveland, Ohio, where he immediately befriends Marty McFly's mom as he saves her from two attackers outside of the nightclub where her band regularly performs. It's sort of odd how she seems to instantly fall in love with Howard upon first sight, despite the fact that he's a 3-foot half bird, half man. She oddly even tries to get some ducktail from him later on in the movie. And this is just one example of the many aspects of this movie that are either weird, unexplained, or make zero sense. But I won't go into too much detail on all the plot holes as to not spoil this gem for you. So what's awesome about it? Well, it's so wacky you can't help but be entertained. Howard must have super strength or something because he's able to fight off multiple groups of people who are twice his size, and everyone seems to want to kick this duck's ass throughout the entire film. He's fighting in nearly every other scene, but never seems to get badly harmed, although he does claim to know quack foo, which is just one of many corny bird puns in the movie.
No more Mr. Nice Duck.
Also, Tim Robbins' character goes apeshit every time he sees Howard, and the police are constantly chasing him and wanting to lock him up for seemingly no reason other than that he's a duck. But the craziest thing about this movie is the endless sexual references despite it being rated PG. From the issue of Play Duck magazine Howard's checking out in the very first scene, and yes, they actually showed the girly duck centerfold in all her glory rather than just showing the cover from a front-facing angle while he reads it, to the topless duck woman taking a bath as Howard is blasting through the walls getting pulled by the laser a moment later. Or the scene where Marty McFly's mom accidentally pulls a tiny duck-sized condom from his wallet. Or two scenes after that, when Howard's lusting after a big booty worker at the unemployment office, before attempting to motorboat her cheeks. Shouldn't he be attracted to other duck women? Or the very next scene after that, where he gets a job at a love spa, and there are practically naked couples running around getting frisky with each other in every area of the building. And this is all in the first 25 minutes. Not to mention Howard talking about people getting sex changes, bikers with the word slut on their jackets, or Marty McFly's mom romping around in skimpy panties in a scene where she attempts to seduce Howard. Granted, this was made back in the days where even movies like Ghostbusters were rated PG, despite Ray getting a beej from the ghost, and lines like,
"This man has no dick."
But the fact that this movie has the same rating as Stuart Little, despite all the violence, cursing, weapons, alcohol consumption, smoking, bestiality, and other sex and drug references is pretty amazing. And speaking of alcohol consumption, this movie must have been sponsored by Budweiser or something, because there are as many shots of Budweiser bottles or signs as there are fights in this thing. Eventually, Howard also meets Ferris Bueller's principal, who's a scientist in this movie, and he actually delivers a pretty decent performance, as does Leah Thompson. But Tim Robbins and the rest of the cast, however, is a different story. Despite a lot of the bad acting, though, and the plot holes and general 80s corniness, or maybe because of those things, this movie, which was produced by George Lucas by the way, is awesome. So of all the movies in this video, the next one is probably the one I loved and watched more than any of the rest as a kid. Why that is, I couldn't tell you, because it's super weird, really corny, and like Howard the Duck, features the cringiest characters played by little people in strange puppet costumes. but that's probably why I loved it. It's also the most hated in the list, being the only movie with a 0% on the tomato meter. It has a 27% audience score and a 2.6 rating on IMDb, giving it a total average rating of just 18%. So what's this Hollywood atrocity I speak of? The Garbage Pail Kids, released in 1987. It's based on the Garbage Pail Kids trading cards, a whacked-out version of the 80s hit toy Cabbage Patch Kids, with characters like Messy Tessie, Windy Winston, and Valerie Vomit. The acting in this movie is horrendous. The music, the most generic 80s synth and drum machine tunes you've ever heard. And the story, just plain ridiculous. Also, like Howard the Duck, so much goes unexplained. Basically, the kid from Facts of Life, who's 14 in this movie, is constantly getting chased, beaten up, and robbed for some reason by this 24-year-old looking Don Johnson wannabe, his friend who looks like he got kicked out of the band Judas Priest, and their 80s rocker chick girlfriends, one of which is the biggest of the bunch and oddly loves seeing this little kid get beaten up. I guess because
those are my kind of guys, real psychos.
I mean, don't these people have jobs? What is this? She also is proven to be stronger than both the guys in one scene where they need her strength to open a sewer lid and unscrew a spigot to cover Facts of Life kid with sewage. Who says strong female characters don't exist in film? The other main chick, who goes by the name Tangerine, is the main female lead, and her boyfriend, the Don Johnson wannabe, is actually named Juice in the movie. Tangerine and Juice. Like, what is this? Did the scriptwriter have an obsession with fruit or something? I guess they're a perfect match. Although Juice practically breaks her arm at one point, because he's not only a bully, but a controlling, abusive boyfriend too. Anyway, Facts of Life kid has a crush on Tangerine, and he works for a magician at an antique shop where there's a trash can containing the Garbage Pail Kids for no apparent reason. The trash can just goes from flying in space with jet flames coming out the bottom in one scene to being in this guy's shop the next, and the magician warns Facts of Life never to open it. But of course it accidentally does get knocked open during the lamest, slowest, and most ridiculous fight scene in the history of film. Then chaos ensues. Now first off, this 14-year-old kid seems to constantly be working in this antique shop. Weren't there labor laws in the 80s? He's there all the time. Even during a creepy bath scene where the magician and all the Garbage Pail Kids stand around watching him bathe in the middle of the store to get the sewage off. Can't this kid get cut early to go home and take a bath? Also, Tangerine seems to be running some sort of fashion garment business out of the trunk of her car at nightclubs, because she wants to be a professional fashion designer. But the actress who plays her is also only like 15. She does drive a convertible though, so I guess the character is supposed to be a little older. At least I hope so. Otherwise, why is this 15-year-old girl dating some dude who looks like he's in his mid-20s? And there's a weird scene where she also takes her shirt off unnecessarily while selling her garments behind the club. There are so many things wrong with this movie that I would need to devote an entire video to pointing them all out. And if you want to see that video, let me know in the comments and I'll make it happen. But otherwise, this movie is just filled with a bunch of gross, ridiculous booger pee and fart jokes, and you have to see it to understand how awesomely bad it really is. But I won't spoil the story any further for you. All you need to know is it's about fashion, love, and creepy, disgusting creatures. So brace yourself and make sure you check this one out. This next movie on our list is another one I watched religiously as a kid. Probably more than any of the rest but the Garbage Pail Kids. And this one ranks highest, getting a 38% on the tomato meter with an audience score of 54% and a whopping 5.7 on IMDb, being the only movie of the entire bunch to barely break the 50% approval rate with a total average rating right at 50%. Short Circuit came out in 1988. Right during that period in the 80s where everything was about robots. And puppets too, apparently. This is the sequel to the original Short Circuit, where one of a fleet of robots built by an engineer, number 5, becomes sentient after getting struck by lightning, and the military tries to use him as a weapon. Only in this movie, the engineer is now making toy replicas of the robot and trying to sell them in the streets of New York, where a toy company rep discovers him and wants to do a deal for the Christmas season. Another street salesman, somewhat of a sleazy one, played by Michael McKean, overhears the deal the engineer is making for the toys and works his way in to help himself and Ben, the engineer, make a payday. He helps by negotiating the deal and getting a warehouse and staff to build the toys. But when the operation gets smashed up by some crooks, Ben's friends from the first movie send him the robot, now named Johnny 5, to help finish the job in time for the deal to go through. This movie is almost as cheesy as the rest on the list, but has funny moments, a good amount of character development, and it's legitimately entertaining, not just because it's so bad or weird. It's another one with a PG rating, and although it doesn't have as many adult themes as Howard the Duck, it does have quite a few curse words.
Los locos kick your ass! Los locos kick your face! Los locos kick your balls into outer space!
Some of the things that make this movie bad, other than just the typical 80s corniness, is the fact that the main character is supposed to be an Indian guy, but is played by white actor Fisher Stevens. The makeup and his acting are so good though that I had no idea this dude was white until long into my adulthood. But watching it again now, it's hard to get over the fact that this is a white guy faking an accent and wearing brown makeup with dyed hair. I mean, couldn't they have got a legit Indian dude for this movie? It just kinda makes you cringe while watching it, and it's hard to take the character seriously when you know this fact. And just like with the other movies, there are aspects of this one that either go unexplained or make absolutely no sense. Like how the bad guys continuously keep walking into Ben's warehouse and breaking everything because they want to shut them down to use the warehouse to perform a heist. But Ben and his partner make almost no attempt to secure the place in a way that can't be easily accessed so their business plans don't get ruined. People just keep walking right in as they please even after the first attack. Also, Johnny 5 randomly bumps into a guy he befriends in the street one day while he's roaming around in New York, which he often does in this movie, and the guy seems nice, but spoiler alert, out of nowhere the dude just happens to be friends with the bad guys, but the way he meets Johnny 5 is completely coincidental. And the way they reveal that he's friends with the crooks is funny because you could tell the producers tried to play it like a plot twist in the story, but it just makes no sense at all. There's also a B-plot where Ben's in love with the toy rep after talking to her for like 5 minutes, and there's a dramatic scene at the end where she has to save him, but you just gotta watch it to see how ridiculously the whole thing plays out. But despite all the plot holes and nonsense, the corny jokes and other typical 80s cringe like the feel-good 80s plucky bass and saxophone music playing throughout the film, it's really not that bad, at least compared to the other movies in this video. You even sorta end up feeling bad for the robot in some of the sadder scenes, and in the end, when spoiler alert, a dying pissed off Johnny 5 goes Robo-Rambo during a final chase sequence.
I am really pissed off!
Cause you know no cheesy 80s movie would be complete without an intense action scene accompanied by Bonnie Tyler's 1984 hit Holding Out for a Hero. Now this video is running a little bit long, but we definitely have more awesomely bad movies to discuss. So if you want to see those, check out part 2, but before you do that, let us know in the comments if you've already seen these movies or if you'd like to see them. Thanks to everyone who subscribed or clicked like on this video. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, live well and take it easy. Later.